In 2005, two courageous divers set on an adventure they will never forget. Their destination was the picture-perfect island of Santa Isabella, located in the Caribbean, renowned for its crystal-clear seas and abundant marine life. The divers were Sarah Turner and David Roberts, and they were about to go through a terrifying experience that would alter their lives and the way they regarded the sea for the rest of their days. The island of Santa Isabella was a tropical paradise with vast and beautiful scenery. Divers came from all over the world to enjoy the vibrant coral reefs and apparent waters of this location. There were different species in the sea, including fish, oysters, and dangerous man-eating sharks that would attack anyone provoking them. The man-eating sharks had a well-deserved reputation for being one of the most dangerous creatures in the area among novice and experienced divers. Sarah and David were seasoned divers and had a reputation for daring when venturing into the ocean's depths. They were aware of the stories told about the sharks that prowled the waterways, but this did not dissuade them in any way. They were motivated to take the danger by their desire for adventure. Their day started bright and sunny at the Santa Isabella Dive Center, which marked the beginning of their expedition. They embarked on a short journey on a boat accompanied by their dive instructor, Captain Juan Morales. As they set sail, the turquoise waters gleamed under the bright sun of the Caribbean, and there was a distinct sense of exhilaration in the air. The sea had been Captain Morales's home for as long as he could remember, and it showed in his weathered appearance. He was conversant with the attacking incidents that circulated about the man-eating sharks, and he warned the divers about the dangers. Despite this, Sarah and David did not waver in their commitment to investigate even deeper oceans. Sarah and David used their flashlights to guide their way through the coral caves as they plunged into the chasm. The caves were creepy, and the only sound that could be heard was their breathing, breaking the otherwise complete silence. As they traveled farther into the maze-like caves, they encountered some peculiar rock formations and small fish roaming about in the ocean. The coral cave stretched on for what seemed like an eternity, and feeling alone was overwhelming. Despite this, Sarah and David continued exploring because they were determined to discover more of what was deep in the oceans. As the hours passed, they noticed that their air supply was getting lower and lower. As soon as they realized they were lost in the network of coral caves, panic began to set in. Desperation set in, and they knew they needed to locate an exit strategy before it was too late to do so. The eerie calm was abruptly broken by a sound that sent chills down people's spines. It was a low, guttural growl that reverberated throughout the cave. They were startled because it was a sound they had never experienced before. It was the unmistakable roar of the shark that fed on humans. Fear began to race through their veins when they understood that they were not the only ones in the shadows. They were frantic as they attempted to retrace their steps, but it looked as though the maze was shifting and changing around them. The shark's presence was stronger, and its menacing shadow loomed in the distance. They knew the creature's icy, unyielding gaze was fixated on them. Sarah and David found themselves in a precarious situation when they found a small crack leading to another coral cave, just as their oxygen supply began to run low. They got through the opening just in the nick of time, narrowly avoiding capture at the hands of the dogged hunter. They were able to take a moment to reassess their predicament and recover their breath after discovering an air pocket within the chamber. They were exhausted and afraid, but they realized they had to make a decision. They could either wait for assistance and risk drawing the shark's attention or try to find another way out of the labyrinth. They chose the second option because they were dead on evading the terrifying underwater environment. They began their treacherous journey through the caves with shaky hands and racing hearts. The shark's presence remained a persistent danger for them, and time seemed to pass in a haze as they made their way through the dangerous corridors. Their gloomy environment was made even more suffocating by the flickering of their headlamps. They crawled out of the caves, gasping for air and holding each other for support, as it seemed it had been an age since they had been there. They were ushered back into the world of the living as the sunshine broke through the surface and entered the cave. Their ordeal was finally over, but the memory of the man-eating shark and the coral caves would follow them around for the rest of their lives. They had made it through the terrifying journey to the bottom of the abyss, but the ordeal had irrevocably altered who they were. They had emerged from the ocean's depths with a profound reverence for the wild power of the ocean, which had been instilled in them by the ocean's top predator, which had taught them the real meaning of dread. As time went on, Sarah and David became advocates for marine conservation. They have used their experience to educate people about the delicate ecosystems of the ocean and the significance of maintaining these ecosystems for future generations. Their run-in with the man-eating shark had left an indelible impact on their life, serving as a constant reminder that the ocean, despite its allure, was also a region of peril that was beyond their comprehension. In the end, they did not achieve their primary objective of exploring more of the oceans. Still, they did unearth something significantly important: a profound appreciation for the wonders of the profound respect for the creatures that made the deep their home. Their journey had ended, but the ocean's wonders and explorations would continue for years, waiting to be discovered by more daring swimmers and divers. Roger and Camilla were huddled together in the living room of their quaint coastal house, which had just a solitary oil lamp for illumination. The light from the lamp produced flickering shadows on the couple's features. Even though the windows were open, the chilly night air could be felt coming in, yet the coziness of their collective joy kept them comfortable. It was the summer of 1993, and the seaside community of Crescent Bay, located in a beautiful part of the coast of California, was bustling with the arrival of tourists looking to experience the excitement of the ocean. Roger Masters, a rough marine researcher with a salt and pepper beard, and Camilla Foster, a lively underwater photographer with blazing red hair, were no exception to this rule. The fact that they both had a passion for the sea was what initially brought them together, and their most recent endeavor promised to be an experience unlike any other. Roger and Camilla put the finishing touches on their strategy when the clock struck midnight. The great white shark was a species that had long caught the imaginations of thrill-seekers and scientists. The following day, they would plunge into the profound waters of the Pacific Ocean to capture this elusive and gorgeous creature. They set out intending to document the lives of these top predators in a way that had never been done before, armed with cameras and a cage created specifically for them. The town of Crescent Bay has a long and illustrious history, dating back to the early 20th century when it served as a central location for fishing and commerce. Over the course of many years, visitors had been told monster man-eating sharks that lurked in the depths of the ocean, and divers who had vanished without a trace feared to have fallen victim to the sharks. Roger and Camilla were aware of these tales but disregarded them as just stories since they had never heard of them. Despite this, their cynicism was about to be validated in a short amount of time. While Roger and Camilla were on their way to the Crescent Bay Marina, the early morning sun decorated the sky with an array of brilliant colors. They were welcomed by the lively sights and sounds of a fishing town getting ready for another day of labor. During the time that the adventurers were getting their supplies and boat ready, the locals couldn't help but regale them with cases of terrifying run-ins they'd had with the species of the water. They were approached by a grizzled old fisherman named Tom, whose worn face was furrowed with concern. He groaned to them as he strained his eyes to look at their yacht. Roger chuckled, and the twinkle returned to his sea-weary eyes. They told the fisherman that their motive was to photograph and conduct research on great white sharks while they were there. It was where their hearts lay. Tom's expression became gloomier, warning everyone to watch their steps out there. He told them there was more going on there than first appeared to be the case. He claimed something large and dangerous was lurking down there, something in the area long before they arrived. Camilla arched her brow, thoughtfully asking Tom if sharks do eat people. Tom gave a sad nod in response, claiming that Moreso, a sizable man-eating shark, was responsible for more deaths than anyone would acknowledge. He told them to be on their guard, calling them younglings. The warning lingered while Roger and Camilla were putting their boat into the sea. Despite Tom's unnerving story, they were resolute in their pursuit to learn the wonders of the ocean depths. They left the protected confines of the harbor and headed into the open sea, taking their diving gear and setting up the cage first. Roger and Camilla were shocked by the immensity of the Pacific Ocean as they sat in their boat and watched the waves roll in and out. It was a bright and sunny day, and the sun's rays created shimmering patterns on the water's surface. However, they knew that the water held unfathomable wonders beneath the placid veneer. After what seemed like an eternity, they finally arrived at the predetermined location where they anticipated the great white sharks to congregate. As Roger and Camilla put on their armor, the anticipation in each of their hearts made them race. They took their cameras with them as they plunged into the murky depths so that they might capture the wondrous world that was waiting for them there. The waters were icy and pitch black when the first silhouette of a shark was seen gliding by. While underwater, Roger and Camilla exchanged enthusiastic glances through their masks. Their breath was visible in the ocean as it formed bubbles. They were in their element as they repeatedly clicked their cameras to take pictures of the gorgeous creatures they were observing. As the day wore on, the sharks became brazen and began to circle the cage, occasionally coming close enough to touch it. After experiencing some early apprehension, Roger and Camilla came to feel a sense of amazement and kinship with the ocean's top predators. On the other hand, when the sun started its drop toward the horizon, a shiver ran down each of their spines. The behavior of the sharks had changed in a significant way. They did not give off the impression of curiosity. Instead, they appeared anxious and restless. Roger looked at his watch and then motioned to Camilla to let her know it was time to climb. It seemed like it took them far longer to get back to the surface than below. The sharks, who had previously served as subjects for their photographs, gave off an air of being watchful over the depths. It seemed they were being led away from something darker and more menacing than they had previously known. They were exhausted as they scrambled back onto the boat after finally breaking the water's surface. Their joy had turned into worry, and the recollection of Tom's warning lingered thick in the air like a cloud. Roger started the boat's motor to escape the region, but a giant shadow materialized from the sea just as they were about to make their way out of the depths. They had never seen a great white shark quite like this, quickly twice as large as the others. Its eyes were icy and murderous, and when it opened its jaws wide, rows upon rows of razor-sharp fangs were exposed. Within a fraction of a second, the enormous shark lunged for the cage, and the boat was shaken violently by its incredible power. Roger and Camilla stared in shock as the cage was ripped apart, causing their priceless cameras and other equipment to fall into the water below. As the enormous predator continued to circle them, the two divers were forced to cling to the side of the boat because the cage had collapsed. When they finally came to their senses, they were confronted with a terrifying reality. They were stranded in the middle of the ocean with the man-eating shark. Roger and Camilla were overcome with desperation as they searched around for the flare pistol in an attempt to send a signal for aid. However, they knew any assistance would arrive too late to save them. As they watched the enormous shark circle, its menacing eyes were fixated on them, and the minutes seemed like hours to them. As darkness approached, the beast became brazen and made several dangerously close approaches to the boat. Roger and Camilla were the only ones who could see in the pitch black, because the moon was getting dimmer and there were bioluminescent critters in the water. They cuddled close. They tried to hold their fear at bay by assuring one another with soothing words that were only audible to the other. The hours seemed to drag on forever, and eventually the tiredness caught up with them. The chances of Roger and Camilla making it through the night decreased significantly with each passing minute. They were well aware that the odds were stacked against them, and they were completely helpless in the face of the savage beast that prowled these seas. They had just about accepted their lot in life when, all of a sudden, something took place. They were able to hear the low rumbling of motors in the distance, and it was growing increasingly louder with each passing instant. It turned out to be a rescue boat that had responded to their flare. Roger and Camilla hung on, clinging to a rekindled sense of hope despite their diminishing physical capabilities. But they never wavered in their resolve. Just in the nick of time, the rescue squad arrived and used bright lights to drive away the shark in the water. After casting one final unsettling glance in their direction, the enormous shark vanished into the ocean's depths. As Roger and Camilla were being hauled into the rescue vessel, their bodies trembled with a mixture of relief and anxiety. They had only just gotten away from the ocean's most powerful predator in the nick of time. After the event, Roger and Camilla returned to Crescent Bay as local heroes and examples of how not to behave in similar situations. The tale of the man-eating shark and how they survived was passed down from generation to generation, serving as a cautionary tale about the wild and unfathomable depths that lay beyond the coastline. Both Roger and Camilla's lives are irrevocably changed as a result of the event. They continued their efforts to protect marine life, but the memory of that terrible day stayed with them throughout their careers. The events occurred on the rocky shoreline of Port Ainsworth, a quaint fishing hamlet tucked away on the northern coast of Tasmania, Australia. The year was 1995, and the city was well known for its extensive maritime heritage, which included stories of courageous fishermen and dangerous marine animals that have echoed through the ages. Brittany Wilson, an intrepid marine researcher, and Kenny Mitchell, an experienced diver, found themselves pulled to the ocean's depths in the hopes of discovering the wonders beneath its surface. Their objective was to investigate the behaviors of great white sharks known to frequent the seas near Port Ainsworth. As they made their way deeper, they were resolute in their goal to help the ongoing conservation efforts by filming unique footage and collecting vital data. Their perspective on the wild world under the waters was irrevocably shifted due to the unfortunate run-in with the man-eating shark, which was a defining moment in their lives. In the field of oceanographic research, Brittany Wilson and Kenny Mitchell formed a formidable partnership. They had been on several adventures together before, but none had been as dangerous as the one waiting for them in the depths of Port Ainsworth. They were driven by a fascination and passion for the ocean's wonders. The sun was low on the horizon, throwing a warm golden glow on the still waters and stretching out before them. Their vessel was anchored a short distance beyond the breaking waves. The salty breeze carried the expectation of a day packed with new insights and experiences. Their enthusiasm could be felt as they prepared for the event. Brittany carefully inspected her camera equipment, ensuring that each lens was spotless and that all the batteries were charged. The lines engraved into Kenny's face were a monument to the years he had spent beneath the waves. Kenny scrutinized his diving gear with the accuracy of an experienced professional. They gave each other one last look, nodded, and then walked off into the distance, leaving the warm air behind them to enter the refreshing ocean waters. They went deeper into the domain of silence once the water closed around them like a blanket. The underwater landscape of Port Ainsworth was a beautiful patchwork of thriving corals and forests of kelp that swayed in the current. They were surrounded by schools of fish, which flashed silver in the sunlight's mottled pattern. It was a realm that managed to be both peaceful and wild simultaneously, where splendor and peril coexisted in an exquisite dance. Their objective was to track down the elusive great white sharks, considered the most dangerous predators in these waters. Brittany and Kenny thought that, with their extensive knowledge of the enormous creature's behavior, they would be able to acquire film that would shed light on the habits and activities of the massive animals. As the hours changed into days, the days turned into weeks as they diligently searched the depths. Their interactions with the sharks were breathtaking, but they always maintained a safe distance out of respect for the animals. The enormous animals moved through the water with a grace that belied their strength, their eyes bright and intelligent despite their lack of facial features. The sea's temperament shifted suddenly on a morning that would forever be remembered. The unspoken tension in the air caused the IT to become heavier, and the color of the water began to become darker. Brittany and Kenny both had the distinct impression that there had been a change in the natural order. They returned to their regular location when they noticed a shadow forming in the distance. It was enormous, a natural power that exercised dominion over the water all around it. The great white shark, a mammoth creature driven purely by instinct, moved with deliberate intent. Fear paralyzed them, but simultaneously a determination born out of respect for the wild gripped their hearts. They didn't move an inch while the cameras kept rolling, documenting every exquisite detail of the gorgeous creature. Everything shifted in an instant without any warning. The shark propelled itself forward as if propelled by an unseen power. It made a horrific crunching sound as its jaws, laced with razor-sharp teeth, clamped around Kenny's leg. As the fight continued, the color of the water changed to a deep crimson. The training for Brittany began to bear fruit. She battled to keep calm while concentrating on photographing the terrifying event. The world around her appeared to get hazy, and the muffled sounds of the ocean were like a faint afterthought. Kenny was able to break free of his confinement in a last-ditch effort to save his life, but the harm had already been done. There was a brief moment of understanding when their gazes met before parting ways in silence. He gave himself one final shove and drove towards the surface, leaving a trail of blood behind him as he went. Because it was still hungry, the shark switched its focus to Brittany. As she looked into the eyes of the being that held the power of life and death in its grasp, the seconds stretched into eternity before her. Then, under a sudden burst of primitive instinct, Brittany decided in a split second. She unhooked the weighted belt around her waist and kicked upwards, propelling her towards the water's surface. The entire ocean was engulfed in a disorderly frenzy of bubbles and mayhem. Brittany, whose heart was racing in her chest, finally broke the water's surface as she gasped for oxygen. The boat was barely visible as a dot on the horizon in the far distance. She used every ounce of effort she had left to force herself forward, the memory of Kenny's sacrifice raging through her veins as she did so. She was fatigued and beaten when rescuers finally dragged her out of the ocean many hours later. The damage done by the sea was both visible and invisible, leaving scars in its wake. Brittany's eyes never left the horizon, as if she were making a secret pledge to the wild world that had irrevocably altered her life path going forward. Brittany knew she was carrying a story that went beyond the limits of human comprehension as the sun descended below the horizon and spread a blazing glow across the water's surface. She had learned what it meant to be untamed from the shark that ate humans because it was a force of nature, and she, in turn, would carry that wild urge within her, serving as a light for those who dared to walk into the wild unknown.